Good morning, children of God. I'm so glad to be with you today. I just wish that I could see each one of you in person, but this is better than nothing. Today's gospel is full of very important lessons for us. So, I just want you to think about when you go to lunch in school in the cafeteria. Isn't it loud and crazy? Crowds of kids, everyone is so hungry. Can you remember how hungry you were when it got close to lunchtime and the teacher said, okay, everybody get their lunches and line up because we're going to go to the cafeteria, and you were so excited because you were so hungry. And when you finally got there, can you remember opening your lunch to find your favorite food that either you or your parents had packed? Can you remember the smell of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or the Oreos, or the Frito corn chips, or after Halloween, that special Halloween candy, because your parents said that you can have one piece of candy at lunch if you ate it for dessert? Okay, just remember all that. When I was principal of an elementary school, I loved to watch my students eat their lunches. Some of them were like, this is my lunch and I'm going to guard it with my life and no one can have any. Did you ever know anybody like that? There were other kids who would sit at the table and they literally would take all their lunches, dump them out in the middle of the table, and everybody would share it. And one person got to pick and then another person got to pick. It was so much fun to watch. Watching my children deal with their hunger each day was part of my passion for teaching. Today we hear this amazing story about Jesus feeding the 5,000. Thousands of people gathered to hear him preach. He wanted them to hear the good news that God loved them and would always provide for them. He preached to them all day long and about the power of God's love to help and heal. It had grown very late. It was time to eat. And they were in a desolate place. No McDonald's, no Sonic's, no Pizza Hut. Very, very desolate. The disciples came to Jesus and asked him to send them away because there was no food to serve them. Jesus said, go find me food in the crowd and bring it to me. Now the disciples found a small boy whose mother had packed him a lunch for the day. He had 5 loaves. One of the loaves fell out of the basket. 5 loaves and 2 fish. This is a big lunch for a little kid. But it wasn't enough to feed 5,000 people, and the disciples couldn't find anything else. They brought this back to Jesus and said, this is all we could find in this little child. I think it's interesting that God used a little child to prove God's point. God could have found an adult. Jesus could have found an adult in the crowd, and maybe that adult would have had more food. But he used a child. I think he wants to prove that we are all children of God, and we're just all really hungry. But this was Jesus' point. He took this small meal from that small child, and he blessed it and multiplied it. So all the people gathered to hear his words that day were fed. He created so much food that everyone was fed and there were leftovers. This miracle story is the only story that is told in all 4 Gospels. God wanted people to hear this story so much he gave it to all 4 Gospel writers to make sure everyone got the message. In the John story, Jesus says, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. That is the lesson we are hearing today. When we feel physical hunger, we eat food and drink liquid. But have you ever felt weak and scared, anxious, afraid? When we feel that our spirits are weak and empty, we need spiritual food. When we're feeling sad and anxious, we can eat food, but that's not going to make our spirit feel better. Jesus tells us that He is the bread of life, that we can come to Him when we are spiritually hungry, and He will feed us. He will feed us so thoroughly that we will have leftovers to eat for another day and another day and another day. So, let's pray. Loving Jesus, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your spiritual food. We come to you and believe in you, knowing you will feed us today and always. Amen.